All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Friday, April 28th, 2023, and we are live for a special edition of the African History Network show. Some of you all saw me on Roland Martin Unfiltered today. I'm a panelist on usually each Fridays. And I was going to talk about this topic on Thursday, but I was so busy, didn't I get a chance to do this. So we got the news on Thursday that Carolyn Bryant Donham, the accuser of Emmett Till in 1955, we got the news that she passed away. We got the news on Thursday. She passed away at age 88. She was suffering from cancer. She was in hospice, and she actually died on Tuesday, April 25th. So we posted about this on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. And a lot of people were happy to hear the news. Some people, it was mixed reactions, mixed emotions, because a lot of people wanted some type of accountability, wanted her to go to prison, wanted, some type of accountability for lying on Emmett Till. Now, the Department of Justice ended their investigation December 6, 2021. They opened a investigation, and based upon the it was based upon the allegations that Professor Timothy Tyson made in his book, his 2017 book, The Blood of Emmett Till, The Blood of Emmett Till. Now, when that book came out, when articles came out saying that Carolyn Bryant Donham, according to Professor Timothy Tyson, recanted her testimony, etc., we dealt with all that on the African History Network show, okay, when those stories came out. And I had questions about the recantation, because I really could not see any evidence of this. Okay, and I read a lot. I read the articles, numerous articles about it, and they kept citing some of the same passages from Professor Timothy Tyson's book. Now, I've gone through the 16-page report from the Department of Justice. Okay, and this is the report here. We've discussed this here on the African History Network show before. When it came out, when they closed the case December 6, 2021, after they had opened this new investigation based upon the claims that Professor Timothy Tyson made in his book. We talked about this here on the show. So that was probably about December 7th, 2021, when we discussed this. So this is called Emmett Till Notice to Close File. Emmett Till Notice to Close File. Okay. So this is at the Department of Justice website, justice.gov. Everybody should read this, especially if you're posting on social media about Emmett Till, about Carolyn Bryant Donham passing away, all this stuff. You should read this. I've read it 3 times, and we discussed it here on the show probably at least 3 or 4 times. Okay, so we're going to go through this again. All right, now there were I want to primarily look at the article from the Washington Post. Washington Post has a really good article dealing with this, and there's a secondary article from the New York Times that we'll look at also, because there's a passage in the article from the New York Times to look at as well. What's the most important thing to understand with this is to take emotion out of this and focus on logic and the law, and understand that the burden of proof is on the prosecution. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. The prosecution, the Department of Justice or the state, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the charges that they're making based upon the evidence, not based upon beliefs, not based upon what's in the movie, not based upon folklore, not based upon what you heard. In the movie Training Day, which is not one of my favorite movies, I don't like to see Denzel Washington play a villain. But in the movie Training Day, Denzel Washington told Ethan Hawke, "It's not what you believe, is what you can prove. It's not what you believe, is what you can prove." And unfortunately, here, all the witnesses are dead except for Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr., who was Emmett Till's cousin. And he was not, Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr. was not inside of the grocery store on that day in August of 1955. He was outside of the grocery store when Emmett Till came out. All right, now, so in 2017, when the story broke about an interview that Professor Timothy Tyson did in 2008, okay, I read numerous articles dealing with this. And we talked about this here on the African History Network show, but I still had questions. Okay. So I want to, let's look first at this article here from the Washington Post. And I'm trying to pull up one of the original articles here that came out like in 2017 when this story broke. I have so many articles on this, so we'll try to find one of those for you. Okay, so let's look at this here. This article here from the Washington Post came out April 27th. Okay, Carolyn Bryant Donham, elusive accuser in the lynching of Emmett Till, dies at 88. Carolyn Bryant Donham, well, Carolyn, they said Carolyn Bryant, but it's Carolyn Bryant Donham. She remarried. Elusive accuser in the lynching of Emmett Till dies at age 88. The wife of one of Emmett Till's confessed killers, she was a central figure in the 1955 murder that helped spur the civil rights movement. So the murder of Emmett Till helped inspire the modern day civil rights movement. It wasn't just the Montgomery bus boycott. It wasn't just Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on in 1955. Okay, it wasn't just that. She had Emmett Till on her mind when she refused to give up her seat, because on November 27th, 1955, Rosa Parks attended a meeting about the killing of Emmett Till and the effort to try to gather the facts and get justice for Emmett Till. Okay, there is a article from the Zen Education Project that deals with November 27th, 1955. November 27th, 1955. Rosa Parks attends meeting about Emmett Till. Rosa Parks attends meeting about Emmett Till. Everybody should check this out. So in the second online class that I teach dealing with history from 1800 to 1968, we deal with all this history in that class. Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power movement. Okay, we deal with all this history in that class. Okay, now this is from the Zen Education Project. November 27th, 1955, Rosa Parks attends meeting about Emmett Till. All right. And this was a meeting where Dr. T.R.M. Howard was speaking. Okay. And Dr. T.R.M. Howard was the lead organizer in the Emmett Till case in trying to gather facts and get justice for Emmett Till for the trial. Okay. 4 days later, when bus driver James Blake told Rosa Parks to get up to give her seat up, Rosa Parks pushed. She said she was pushed as far as she could be pushed, and she refused. Okay, and she told Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett Till's mother, that she had Emmett Till on her mind when she was on that bus. Okay, so read the rest of this here. November 27th, 1955, Rosa Parks is meeting about Emmett Till. Okay, because Rosa Parks was an activist, and one of the things that she did for the NAACP was she investigated sexual assaults, especially on African American women. She investigated the gang rape of Reese Taylor and the sexual assault of Gertrude Perkins. Okay, so that's a powerful sister, Rosa Parks. There's a documentary on MSNBC and on Peacock called The Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks. Everybody should check that out. The Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks. She was no punk. She was not a pushover. Her husband, Raymond Parks, owned guns. I think Rosa Parks may have owned guns, but we know her husband owned guns. So this sister has been reduced to this little sweet lady who didn't want to give up her seat. Just like Dr. King has been reduced to a sweet, lovable man that everybody loves. Dr. King was a revolutionary who was the most hated man in America when he died, when he was assassinated April 4th, 1968. Okay, so what I want to focus on here in this article, we're going to start with page 3. Is where I want to focus. But right here it says Ms. Bryant. On page 2, it says, let's see here. Ms. Bryant, a central and ultimately elusive figure in a lynching that stunned the nation with its brutality and helped spur the civil rights movement, died April 25th, 2023, at her home in Westlake, Louisiana. She was 88 years old. So she was in hospice care, suffering from cancer. Her death was confirmed by the Calcasieu Parish Coroner's Office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. No cause was given in the statement. Ms. Bryant had cancer and was under hospice care, the news site Mississippi Today reported. Okay, now, if we go to page 3, they talk about the book, of Emmett Till, 2017. And I had questions about these claims about a recantation that were made in 2017 when this story broke. Okay. But we're going to get into this. For years, questions swirled about Miss Bryant's role in Emmett Till's abduction and whether she had identified Emmett Till for his assailants. After shunning interviews for decades, she received renewed attention in 2017 with the publication of the book, The Blood of Emmett Till, in which the author, Duke University professor Timothy B. Tyson, reported that she had recanted key portions. Okay, this is important. He reported in her book that she had recanted key portions of the testimony that she had given in court in 1955. Now, the problem is, when the Department of Justice did their investigation into the claims that Professor Timothy Tyson was making, he could not provide them evidence that she recanted her testimony. We're going to get to this, because this is what I've been saying. There's a lack of evidence admissible in court to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that in the investigation that ended in 2021, that she lied, that she committed perjury. Not on the witness stand in 1955. In the investigation, we're going to go through, I'm going to take you through briefly the 16-page report. We're going to focus on pages 4 and 5, okay? Especially section D, which talks about Professor Timothy Tyson. Okay, now, quote, nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him. Carolyn Bryant Donham was said to have told Professor Timothy Tyson in a 2008 interview. Nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him. Well, we already know that. That's not a confession. We already know that. Professor Timothy Tyson said he did 2 interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham in 2008 for his book, The Blood of Emmett Till, which came out in 2017. He said that she recanted testimony, and he talked about, smoking gun evidence and all of this, right? Now, the first question I had is, if you interviewed her in 2008 and she recanted testimony, why'd you wait 9 years to say something about it? Because when you read the Department of Justice report, he started talking about her recantation, alleged recantation, a month before his book came out in 2017. But you interviewed her in 2008 twice. So if she recanted testimony and you had the evidence, why'd you wait 9 years to say something about it? That's the first red flag. Now, shortly after the book's publication, the book was published in 2017, federal authorities reopened an investigation into Emmett Till's murder and subpoenaed Professor Timothy Tyson's research materials. That investigation was closed on December 6, 2021, as stated from the report that I have right here that I've read, with no charges filed. So people were yelling and screaming when this came out. And so what did I do? Y'all know me. I don't do that. Proper documentation ends all conversation. I did the research. I read the report. When I read the report, and we talked about this, I think it was December 7th, 2021, the day after, because I had to have time to go through and read the report. I said, oh, I see why they didn't file charges. There's a lack of evidence to take into court to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she lied during this investigation. Now, if somebody got evidence, I hope you went to the Department of Justice with it. Because when you go through and see how Professor Timothy Tyson kept changing his explanations and kept waffling back and forth on what he was saying, if they put him on the witness stand, because they would have to put him on the witness stand, because he stated that she recanted testimony. Carolyn Bryant Donham said she did not recant testimony. 1, 2, her daughter-in-law was present for both of the interviews that Professor Timothy Tyson did. Her daughter-in-law said she did not recant testimony. Okay, so now you have a witness. Now, where's your evidence to prove she recanted testimony? If you don't have evidence to prove it, guess what? That ain't going to court. And if they try to take that to court and they put Professor Timothy Tyson on the witness stand, Carolyn Bryant Donham's defense attorneys, because she ain't going to court by herself. This ain't people's court. She's going to have attorneys. Her defense attorneys will destroy him on cross-examination. I could destroy him on cross-examination, and I haven't even been to law school. I've taken law classes, but I haven't been to law school. I could destroy him on cross-examination. Okay, now, that investigation was closed December 6, 2021, with no charges filed. Now, according to the Department of Justice, Carolyn Bryant Donham denied ever having changed her account. She denied recanting her testimony. She denied ever changing her account. Also, according to the Department of Justice, Professor Timothy Tyson claimed to have 2 recorded interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham but provided authorities with only one interview, which included no recantation. He said he lost the other recording. Okay? He said he lost the other recording. Now, when you get deep into the report, the 16-page report from the Department of Justice, his explanation kept changing about what happened to the second recording. Now, he did provide transcripts of the two audio recordings. The Department of Justice reviewed the transcripts. They reviewed the one audio recording that he provided, and they said in neither the one audio recording or the two transcripts of the audio recordings that you provided us, there is no recantation of testimony in any of this that you provided us. Now, the second question I have is like, wait a second. You're writing a book. You do 2 audio interviews with her in 2008. You didn't back up your audio recordings on external hard drives. You're writing a book and you're interviewing her for the book about Emmett Till. I have 7 external hard drives to back up the research that I do. You didn't back up your audio recordings on external hard drives? I have 7 to back up my research. That doesn't make sense to me. The other thing that doesn't make sense to me is you interviewed her in 2008, but you waited to 2017 to say that you had evidence that she recanted testimony. Maybe if you had said something in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, maybe there may have been witnesses who were still alive. And then along with the witnesses and your new evidence, maybe she could have been brought to justice. But he started talking about it a month before his book came out. Okay. Let's continue. So Professor Timothy Tyson claimed to have 2 recorded interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham, but provided authorities with only 1 recorded interview, which included no recantation. He offered what the Department of Justice described as, quote, inconsistent explanations. They go into this in the report. He offered inconsistent explanations about whether the alleged confession was on the missing recording or whether Carolyn Bryant Donham made her remarks before Timothy Tyson began taping. Because one of the famous quotes was, when all those articles came out in 2017, one of the famous quotes was, I arrived, she started spilling the beans before I could get set up or something like this. Okay, so did you record a recantation or not? In any case, the statute of limitations for perjury, the state offense with which Carolyn Bryant Donham might have been charged, had expired more than 60 years ago. So because perjury charges, lying under oath on the witness stand or in like a written document, like an affidavit or something like that, the statute of limitations is like 5 to 7 years, depending upon the state. That's long gone. So you're not going to be able to get her on charges because she lied on the witness stand in 1955. But under a federal investigation from the Department of Justice, and the FBI conducts the investigation, under that investigation, a new investigation is open. If she lies to interviewers, if she lies to people that are interviewing her, and they can prove she's lying, then perjury charges can be brought based upon her lying in the investigation, and you have evidence that she's lying. But somebody just saying she's lying, saying the witch lied, is not evidence. That's an opinion. Where's your evidence to back up your opinion? Especially evidence that's admissible in court. Now, quote, in closing this matter without prosecution, the Department of Justice declared in a statement, quote, the government does not take the position that the state court testimony that Carolyn Bryant Donham gave in 1955 was truthful or accurate. They're not saying that. Okay, they're not saying that her testimony in the trial in 1955 was truthful or accurate. There remains, they put in the report, there remains considerable doubt as to the credibility of her version of events. Now, once again, the trial was in 1955. Statute of limitations have expired. If she lied to the interviewers who conducted this investigation that closed December 6, 2021, and they have evidence admissible in court to prove that she lied, okay, you can get on perjury charges. If you don't have evidence, no charges. In any case, the statute of limitations for perjury, the state offense with which Ms. Bryant might have been charged, had expired more than 60 years earlier. Now, according to Professor Timothy Tyson's book, Carolyn Bryant Donham was born Carolyn Holloway on July 23rd, 1934, near Kruger, Mississippi. Okay, I want to skip over this backstory about her because that's not the important. You can read it, but that ain't the important part that I want to focus on. Let's go to page 4. Okay, right here. Let's start with this. In court. Let's go. We're going to page 4. Okay, so she was married to Roy Bryant. J.W. Millam was her brother-in-law. Okay, she was married to Roy Bryant. Roy Bryant ran a trucking company before working for J.W. Millam and then opening Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market in Money, Mississippi. Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market in Money, Mississippi. The family lived in the same building where they sold beer, drinks, and foodstuffs, catering mostly to Black customers. Now, in court, Carolyn Bryant testified that she was alone in the store on August 24th, 1955. Okay. When Emmett Till stopped in for candy. In her initial meeting with attorneys, she claimed simply that Emmett Till insulted her, according to material unearthed years later by the Clarion Ledger of Jackson, Mississippi. This is a newspaper in Jackson, Mississippi, the Clarion Ledger. Okay. In her initial meeting with lawyers, she claimed simply that Emmett Till had insulted her, according to material unearthed years later by the Clarion Ledger of Jackson, Mississippi. But at her husband's trial, Roy Bryant, a different story emerged. Carolyn Bryant said that when she reached out to receive Emmett Till's money, he grabbed her hand and asked in what she described as a northern brogue, "How about a date, baby?" Okay. Now, this is in Mississippi. You dealing with segregation in Mississippi. Emmett Till's from Chicago. Emmett Till is 14 years old. He doesn't know the unwritten laws of segregation in Mississippi. Okay. And how to interact with white people, things like this, generally speaking. Now, Carolyn Bryant said that she pulled her hand loose and that Emmett Till followed her back to the store, putting his arm around her waist. Okay, now this is not what she initially told attorneys. This is what she said at her husband's trial. Quote, "You needn't be afraid of me," she said Emmett Till told her. She said Emmett Till used what a lawyer called an quote unquote unprintable word to describe his previous liaisons with white women. Okay, now this would he was 14, so it would I wouldn't call it white women, it'd probably be white girls. So I'm just saying he was 14, okay, but this is what she said in court. All right, now we're about to come to a really important point. Carolyn Bryant testified that the encounter left her scared to death, and that Emmett Till left. She ran to a car for a pistol. She said Emmett Till let out a whistle, an account that fueled lore, folklore, rumors, etc. An account that fueled lore that he had wolf whistled at her. Okay. She said Emmett Till let out a whistle. Now, Simeon Wright, a cousin of Emmett Till's, who was one of several people with him at the time at the store, at the grocery store, also recalled hearing Emmett Till whistle and said that it, quote, scared us half to death. Scared us half to death. Now, this is not me saying this. This is Simeon Wright, who has passed on. He's an ancestor now. This was Emmett Till's cousin who was there, who said he recalled hearing Emmett Till whistle and said it scared us half to death. Okay. Now, of course, there's no reason for him to be retaliated against, attacked, kidnapped, tortured, none of that. Okay. We're just dealing with, this is Simeon Wright, who was there, who's saying what happened. Now, Simeon Wright told Chicago Magazine, "We were almost in shock," quote unquote. "We were almost in shock." He told Chicago Magazine years later in an interview. He said, we couldn't get out of there fast enough because we had never heard of anything like that before. A black boy whistling at a white woman in Mississippi. No. Okay. Now, the jurors, now this is like a really important point here that gets left out of the conversation when people talk about her saying one thing to the attorneys, but then in court saying something else at her husband's trial. The jurors did not hear Carolyn Bryant Donham's testimony because the judge had deemed it extraneous to the matter of the killing and excused the jury from the courtroom. Okay. Now, of course, the jury found them acquitted, the two men. A few months later, in Look magazine, they admitted killing Emmett Till. They would pay $4,000 for the interviews. Everybody in Mississippi knew these two killed Emmett Till, including all the black people. They knew these two killed Emmett Till. Okay. But it's a matter of proving it in court. But accounts of Emmett Till's, if you watch Eyes on the Prize, okay, if you watch Eyes on the Prize, the original Eyes on the Prize, okay, the first installment of Eyes on the Prize deals with the murder of Emmett Till, okay, and they talk about the trial in Mississippi. You had news outlets from all over the country that went down to Money, Mississippi, or the Money, Mississippi area for that trial. The trial took place in a segregated courtroom. So African Americans on one side, white people on the other side, because you're dealing with segregation in Mississippi. So African Americans coming from the north, a lot of them, what was taking place in the courtroom and the segregation in Mississippi, things like this, it was just blowing their minds. Okay. You had Representative Charles Diggs from Michigan. He went down there, African American man, African American congressman. He goes down there. You have the publisher of the New York Amsterdam News. He's interviewed on Eyes on the Prize, and he talks about how being in that courtroom, it was like going back in time. Okay, and he said Representative Charles Diggs was outside trying to get into the courtroom, and he said somebody told, like a bailiff or something like this. They said this N-word here said there's an N-word outside who says he's a congressman. And the other guy said, N-word congressman? He said, yeah. So these white people couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that there was an African-American congressman. Because now you had that during Reconstruction, 1865, 1877. Okay, but Republicans colluded with the Democrats to end Reconstruction. Then the white supremacists, after Reconstruction ends in 1877, they're changing the laws in the state legislature, and they're rewriting state constitutions. And in 1890, Mississippi rewrites their state constitution to impose poll taxes and literacy tests. Talking about Mississippi. What Mississippi did to take back control. Now, you have to understand, African Americans were the majority of the population in Mississippi in 1890. Okay? And we were the majority of the voters. This is a legacy of slavery up until 1910. So we look at the Great Migration. Great Migration begins basically 1915, 1916. In 1910, when the census is taken every 10 years, 90% of African Americans still live in the South in 1910 as a legacy of slavery. So when we look at what happened in Mississippi in what's known as the Mississippi Plan, okay, Washington Post is a good article about this, and we go through and break all this stuff down. Let's see. Solomon Saladin Calhoun was the white county judge who presided over the Mississippi Convention of 1890. And he said, we came here to exclude the Negro. We came here to exclude the Negro. And they were talking about rewriting the state constitution and rewriting the laws to impose poll taxes and literacy tests and suppress the African-American vote. Let me see something here. Where's that article? It's an article from the Washington Post on this. Okay, yeah, this one right here. Mississippi, the Mississippi Plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro. If you don't think voting is important, politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Okay? Europeans have killed us to keep us from voting. And this is why they rewrote the state constitutions. Okay? So these simple Simon ass people around here telling black people don't vote, they don't understand history. The Mississippi Plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro. This is from May 1st, 2021, written by Ronald Schaefer for the Washington Post. They talk about Solomon Saladin Calhoun, who was a white county judge. He was the convention's president. Okay, the state convention's president to rewrite the state constitution. He put the voting issue bluntly. He said, let's tell the truth if it burst the bottom of the universe. We came here to exclude the Negro. Okay, we came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. Delegates at the Mississippi State Convention in 1890 adopted a literacy test and a poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in a state with a black majority. They did this in a state, they did this to suppress the African-American vote in a state that had a black majority. And even today, Mississippi has the largest percentage population of African-Americans at 39% of the state population. Out of any state in the US, Mississippi has the largest percentage population of African-Americans. The Mississippi Plan became the model throughout the South, part of a raft of racially oppressive Jim Crow laws that ended Reconstruction, which ends in 1877, Reconstruction. But they're doing this after Reconstruction. They're taking back control of the state legislatures, voting African Americans out of local and state office. Okay, and then we're getting wiped out of Congress as well. Okay, Congress and the Senate, we're getting voted out. So by 1900, George Henry White is the only African American left in Congress. And it's in 1900 that George Henry White is going to introduce the first anti-lynching bill. This is in 1900. It took 122 years for it. They tried about 200 times to get an anti-lynching bill passed over the years. It took 122 years for a federal anti-lynching bill to be passed. That's the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill that passed the House and the Senate and was signed into law by President Joe Biden. It took 122 years for that, from 1900, when Representative George Henry White introduced the first bill. Okay, now, when we look at this, so then after what Mississippi does gets copied by the other states. South Carolina, 1895, Louisiana, 1898. Then Louisiana imposes the grandfather clause, which states that prior to 1867, if your grandfather could not vote, that means you can't vote. Your grandfather couldn't vote probably because he was a slave. Okay, so they're trying to put laws in place to circumvent the 15th Amendment of 1870. Okay, so there's a good article here from the Zen Education Project that deals with this. Okay, so we have to understand the whole context. The lynching of Emmett Till is not an isolated incident. You have to understand the historical context that takes place within, and the oppressive conditions that African Americans were living in and had been living in Mississippi for decades. November 1st, 1890. Okay, hold on, back up. November 1st, 1890, Mississippi Constitution. On November 1st, 1890, Mississippi adopted a new constitution with a poll tax and arbitrary literacy tests. Arbitrary. They just applied to whoever they want to. It just happened to be applied to African Americans, because illiterate white people, usually they would not apply the test to illiterate white people. Okay. Arbitrary literacy tests for voting, sections designed to disenfranchise newly franchised African American men, because women couldn't vote, generally speaking, at that time, and some poor whites. The new constitution was a nail in the coffin for Mississippi Reconstruction and a win for voter suppression. It brought an end to the period of democratic progress that followed the Civil War. Civil War is 1861, 1865, when African Americans were the majority of eligible voters in Mississippi. Okay, so then what happens is other southern states, former Confederate states, start copying what Mississippi did. This can be seen in the state constitutions with similar voter suppression statutes adopted by South Carolina, 1895, Louisiana 1898, North Carolina 1900, Alabama 1901, Alabama State Constitution 1901. They rewrote their state constitution to codify white supremacy. That's not me saying that. That's what the Encyclopedia of Alabama says. It says they rewrote their state constitution to impose white supremacy. Go research the Encyclopedia of Alabama and go look at the Alabama State Constitution of 1901, Virginia 1901, Georgia 1908, Oklahoma 1910. They all copied what Mississippi did. Okay, so when we study Emmett, we talk about Emmett Till. Emmett Till takes place within this whole context of decades of oppression against African Americans. Also, Mississippi was the state that had the most number of lynchings from 1882 to 1968, 581 lynchings. Okay, so NAACP.org at their national website, they have historical information there dealing with lynchings, history of lynching. Okay, check that out, NAACP.org. They have historical information there dealing with lynchings. And this right here, history of lynching in America. What are lynchings? This is at the NAACP's national website. Then they go through and they break down, let's see, where is it? History of lynching. Okay, from 1882 to 1968, there were 4,743 lynchings that occurred in the United States that are documented, according to records maintained by the NAACP. Other accounts, including the Equal Justice Initiative's extensive report on lynching, count slightly different numbers, but it's impossible to know for certain how many lynchings occurred because there was no formal tracking. There was no formal tracking. Many historians believe the true number is underreported. Now, the highest number of lynchings during that period, 1882 to 1968, the highest number of lynchings during that period occurred in Mississippi, where Emmett Till was lynched. Mississippi, where Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney were killed June 21st, 1964, the 3 civil rights workers. Where Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, where Medgar Evers was assassinated in June 1963 by Byron Della Beckwith. Okay, Georgia was second with 531 lynchings, and Texas was third with 493. Lynchings did not occur in every state, contrary to popular belief. Lynchings did not occur in every state. There are no recorded lynchings in Arizona, Idaho, Maine, Nevada, South Dakota, Vermont, and Wisconsin. Now, they have small African-American populations, by the way, just so people understand. Okay, hell, in Maine and Vermont, if you saw Roland Martin Unfiltered today, I talked about this. In Maine and Vermont, did you know that convicted felons who are in prison, convicted and sitting in prison, did you know that they can vote from prison? Because Maine and Vermont historically don't have large populations of African Americans. So you may be saying, I never heard nothing like that. Okay, well, one, that's why you should subscribe to the African History Network. On Facebook, the African History Network, and YouTube, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. 2, that's why you should watch the African History Network show, normally on live Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then we do broadcast throughout the day, rebroadcast. Okay. And then also 3, this is why you should register for my online history classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays, 12-week online history classes. We get deep into this information. But here's some evidence for you. Go read this article, because proper documentation ends all conversation. Most states disenfranchise felons. Maine and Vermont allow inmates to vote from prison. This is NBCnews.com. Advocates say the rehabilitative effects of letting inmates have a voice is profound. Now, this is from February 26, 2018. Okay. And go read this article. The reason why it's legal in Maine and Vermont, they have like very small populations, but they don't have a history of having large populations of African Americans. The voters, the felony disenfranchisement laws, where you lose your right to vote if you have a felony, those were created to target African Americans after slavery, to suppress our voting power, because we were in a lot of these states, we were the majority of the population. 1868, and I'm gonna come back to Emmett Till. We're still right on the subject. I haven't left the subject. You got to understand the context of Mississippi leading up to Emmett Till's lynching. 1868, when Florida writes their state constitution, 3 years after slavery ends, chattel slavery ends, with the ratification of the 13th Amendment, December 6, 1865, when Georgia ratifies the 13th Amendment. You have Florida adopting a felony disenfranchisement law, and you lose your right to vote if you're convicted of a felony. They also expand the number of crimes that are classified as felonies, and they're targeting African Americans. Why are they targeting African Americans? Because in 1868, African Americans were 48% of the population in the state of Florida. 48%. And they feared us voting, and they feared what they called a Negro legislature. They feared a Negro legislature. So they write their state constitution to strip us of the right to vote if we're convicted of a felony. So when you understand that, then you understand what's taking place in Florida right now. We can draw a direct line from 1868, and I'm gonna give you a source for it, because I have thousands of articles. I can prove what I'm talking about. This ain't one of those shows we make claims that we can't back up. Damn that. Didn't Juvenile say back that thing up? We back that thing up. Proper documentation ends all conversation. This is from the Brennan Center for Justice. History of Florida's felony disenfranchisement provision. This is from the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and the Brennan Center for Justice. History of Florida's felony disenfranchisement provision. Go Google this, okay? For the sake of time, we want to look at this right here. Felony disenfranchisement in the 1868 Florida State Constitution was part of a larger effort to prevent a Negro legislature. It was part of a larger effort to prevent a Negro legislature. Post-emancipation, after slavery ends, legislators in Florida feared that freedmen, former slaves, black freedmen, because we didn't keep calling ourselves slaves after slavery ended, which is why I don't understand why some people want to call themselves descendants of slaves when you should call yourself descendants of freedmen or former slaves or ex-slaves, because we didn't keep calling ourselves slaves after slavery ended. So why are we trying to put our ancestors back into a condition that they fought to free themselves from? That makes no sense to me. But I'm somebody that actually teaches history. Legislators in Florida feared that freedmen, because we didn't keep calling ourselves slaves after slavery ended, who then constituted 48% of the state's population. These white people feared that these African Americans would take over state and local government. I'll be damned. They feared our vote. They feared us having political power. The 1868 Florida State Constitution contains several provisions to prevent this from happening. They said, oh, hell no. Because you got to understand, this is one of the states that seceded from the Union. Florida took up arms, committed treason against the federal government based upon Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. They took up arms to keep African people enslaved. You think a white supremacist like Ron DeSantis wants an advanced placement African American studies course that would educate the descendants of these African people how to overthrow their oppressor? Hell no. which is why Florida needs to be desanitized. I warned African Americans about this demon when he ran in 2018. And you had these woke ass black people saying, oh, Andrew Gillum doesn't have a black agenda. So they weren't going to vote for Andrew Gillum. These simple Simon ass people don't understand politics. I said, Ron DeSantis has a black agenda. He has an anti-black agenda. And an anti-black agenda is worse than not having a black agenda. Not only that, you simple Simons, a black agenda is not what politicians give us. That's what we put together and give them. So if you're waiting on a politician to give you a black agenda, you don't deserve one in the first place. Yeah, I said it. A black agenda comes, that's what we organize and put together from understanding history, law, economics, and politics. That's not what you sit on your ass waiting on a politician to give you. Nobody does that. That's stupid. Let's continue. So Sharon said, teach, brother. Okay. Sharon Simpson said, teach, brother. We got Robert Adams. He has some words for Carolyn Bryant Donham. Said, rest in hell. Okay. Hopefully her soul is tormented. Okay. She's reunited with Rush Limbaugh. And Roger Ailes, founder of Roger Ailes is the founder of Fox News. Okay. That's Roger Ailes, that white supremacist, Roger Ailes. Nick said, as always, insightful information. Okay, we got Ben Frank watching as well. Just a few of the people. Also, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network as well. $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. I've been broadcasting the African History Network show for 13 years. Sundays, we're on 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. I do live radio here in Detroit. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com for more information, because we have the information right on the homepage of the website, as well as information dealing with the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is my interview I did with Tony Browder. We talked about why Nile Valley civilization history matters, African queens. We also talked about Queen Cleopatra and the controversy from the Netflix documentary. We dealt with that a little bit. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understand the transatlantic slave trade. So we do that Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Sundays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I teach another 12-week online course, Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement. We look at history from 1800 to 1968 chronologically. Okay, so register for those classes. That they're on sale right now. $60, regular $130. We have a bundle pack for $100, and you get 5 of my lectures free also. Okay, so and even after the course is over with, you can go back and watch. You should have full access to the class. You can go back and watch it anytime. A year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. All right, let's continue. Okay, now let me go back to this. And then also on Saturday, April 29th, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, I'll be interviewing Dr. Charles Finch, historian, Dr. Charles Finch, and we're going to talk about Queen Cleopatra VII, and we'll also deal with his new book dealing with 10,000 years of Nile Valley civilization history. 10,000 years of Nile Valley civilization history. So that'll be right here at the African History Network. Also, we'll be on Facebook and YouTube for that. All right, let's continue. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the article from the Washington Post. Let me close out some of these tabs here. There's a lot of information, but I need to give you some background information on Mississippi, because everybody doesn't know about this. My dad's family is from Mississippi. I've been to Mississippi. visited family down there when I was a child. So my dad, taught me about Mississippi like when I was young. Okay, so the jurors, going back to the jury trial, the jurors did not hear Carolyn Bryant Donham's testimony. The judge, having deemed it extraneous to the matter of the killing, and excused them from the courtroom. But accounts of Emmett Till's supposed transgressions nonetheless entered the narrative of his slaying after the fact, the narrative of his slaying. Okay, so the jury did not hear, her talking about him allegedly grabbing her and going to the back room and all that stuff. What she said in the trial, which was different than what she initially told attorneys. Okay. All right. Now, the international coverage of Emmett Till's murder, including photographs of his disfigured body in an open casket, made his killing perhaps the most infamous lynching in American history. The notoriety, Professor Timothy Tyson told Vanity Fair magazine in 2017, quote, went a long way toward ruining Carolyn Bryant Donham's life. The notoriety went a long way toward ruining Carolyn Bryant Donham's life. Professor Timothy Tyson further told the New York Times that he had come to believe that Carolyn Bryant had offered her false testimony under coercive conditions. Okay. Professor Timothy Tyson, who interviewed her in 2008 twice, told the New York Times that he had come to believe that Carolyn Bryant Donham had offered her false testimony in 1955 in the trial under quote unquote coercive conditions. Professor Timothy Tyson wrote that Carolyn Bryant confided to him in 2008, quote, I have thought about everything, about Emmett Till, the killing and the trial, telling who did what to who. He reported that she said Emmett Till had not in fact taken hold of her wrist or used a profanity. When Professor Timothy Tyson asked what was true, he wrote that she answered, quote, honestly, I just don't remember. It was 15 years ago. You tell these stories for so long that they seem true, end quote. Now, this is what he said. Okay. Now, Carolyn Bryant divorced Roy Bryant, who reportedly was physically abusive to her. He reportedly was physically abusive to her. He divorced her in 1975. He died in 1994, 14 years after J.W. Millam died, who was his brother-in-law. Okay, these are the two men who killed Emmett Till, and they admitted to killing Emmett Till in an interview with Look magazine just a few months after they were acquitted in the trial, and they were paid $4,000 for the interview. Okay, now they talk about how in 2014, authorities reopened an investigation of the Emmett Till case, including allegations that Carolyn Bryant had helped locate Emmett Till at the home where he was abducted. A district attorney sought to charge her with manslaughter, but in 2007, a grand jury returned no indictment. Okay, after the Justice Department closed its subsequent investigation in 2021, which was December 6, 2021, Professor Timothy Tyson, responding to questions about his account of Carolyn Bryant's reported recantation, told the New York Times in an email that, quote, Carolyn started spilling the beans before I got the recorder going. Oh, see, now this was one of the popular statements that was floating around in 2017 when this story broke, and he said she started spilling the beans before I could get set up, things like this. He said, I documented her words carefully. He added, my reporting is rock solid. This is what he stands by. Okay, but he lost the second recording. And in the two audio transcriptions that he gave, or the two transcriptions of the audio recordings, there's no recantation in the two transcriptions. Okay, so then they talk about private investigations continued, and in 2022, a group of researchers unearthed from a Mississippi courthouse an unserved 1955 arrest warrant for Carolyn Bryant, along with her husband, J.W. Millam, on the charge of kidnapping. Although legal scholars questioned the warrant's enforceability at that point, I told you, if y'all watch this show, you watch the African History Network show, I told you she wasn't going to be indicted on that arrest warrant for 1955. I told you that wasn't going to happen. Sure enough, it didn't happen. Okay. Now, I wanted justice to take place, but I said, you're going to need more evidence than what's floating around. I said, and having read the Department of Justice report that we're about to come to, I said, no, you're going to need more than this. Okay. Because there's some, and there were some problems with the information coming from Professor Timothy Tyson. All right. Once again, it goes back. I got to ask the question. If you had smoking gun evidence in 2008, okay, as you claim she recanted testimony, if you had recordings of her recanting testimony in 2008, why'd you wait 9 years to say something about it? So that's like one of the first questions I had when all this stuff broke, all this news broke in 2017. Now, Emmett Till surviving relatives publicly urged that the arrest warrant be served. A grand jury considered charges of kidnapping and manslaughter, but declined to indict her. All the witnesses are dead except for Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr. The people have to understand, all the witnesses are dead. Maybe 2008, when some of the witnesses were still alive, maybe something could have happened then. All the witnesses are dead now. And you got to prove, you have to be able to prove what you're charging. Okay? Based upon evidence. Now, okay, so read the rest of this here. All right, now I want to go to so this article here, Carolyn Bryant, elusive accuser in the lynching of Emmett Till, dies at 88. Okay, this is from Washington Post, April 27, 2023 by Emily Langer. A very good article. Very good background information, because I've read a number of articles. I have a file on Emmett Till. But I chose that article because it gave good background information and information from the trial as well in 1955. Okay, now there was also a good article as well from the New York Times. It's just one section here that I want to focus on because it talks about the judge in the 1955 trial. Carolyn Bryant Donham dies at 88. Her words doomed Emmett Till. Okay. It talks about the trial, and it deals with the fact that the jury did not hear Carolyn Bryant's testimony. Okay. It deals with the fact that the jury did not hear her testimony because the judge excused the jury from the courtroom. So even though apparently she lied on the witness stand, the jury didn't hear her lies. But the fix was already in. Everybody knew that these white men were not going to be convicted of killing Emmett Till. Everybody knew this. Okay. The jury deliberated for about 45 minutes, came back with a not guilty verdict. Secure in the knowledge that double jeopardy would attach, the two men admitted the killing the next year in a Look magazine article for which they were paid. They paid about $4,000 for that interview because double jeopardy. So they were found not guilty. So if they admitted they killed him after the trial, they can't be tried again because you can be tried for the, they were found not guilty, so you can't try them for the same crime. Okay, so check this out as well. Now we're going to look here at the actual Department of Justice report. We're going to look here briefly at it. Check out that article from the New York Times also. All right, now when we look at, you can pull this up. This is at justice.gov, Department of Justice website. So it was a very, very thorough investigation that concluded December 6, 2021. Emmett Till notice to close file. Emmett Till notice to close file. You can Google this and find this at the Department of Justice website. Okay, so it was closed December 6, 2021. So it gives background information here. 1955, Emmett Till, a 14-year-old Black youth visiting family in Mississippi, was murdered by white men after XX claimed, they redacted her name, Carolyn Bryant Donham claimed that Emmett Till had propositioned her. Emmett Till was from Chicago, Illinois, visited relatives near Money, Mississippi during the summer of 1955. On August 24th of that year, he entered the grocery and meat market and had an interaction with Carolyn Bryant Donham. Accounts differ as to precisely what happened during the encounter, but black witnesses who had accompanied Emmett Till to the store reported both near the time of the incident and more recently that Emmett Till's behavior was limited to whistling. Emmett Till's behavior was limited to whistling at Carolyn Bryant as she left the store. Carolyn Bryant, however, alleged that Emmett Till was physically aggressive towards her and that he propositioned her. What is clear from all accounts is that Carolyn Bryant suffered no physical harm and that Emmett Till's conduct was likely perceived by many in the white community to violate their unwritten code prevalent in the Jim Crow South, that Black men were forbidden from initiating interactions with white women, that Black men were forbidden from initiating interactions with white women. 4 days later, 4 days later, Emmett Till was forcibly abducted from his relative's home by at least 2 men. His brutally beaten body was found 3 days later in the Tallahatchie River. Because there did not appear to be a basis for federal jurisdiction, given the limited scope of the civil rights statutes in effect in 1955, the FBI did not investigate Emmett Till's murder at the time. Mississippi state authorities, however, arrested 2 men, J.W. Millam and Roy Bryant. They were indicted for, and I think also Carolyn Bryant Donham as well. But they were indicted for murder and tried by a local all-white jury, which quickly acquitted them. Following their acquittal, the men admitted to a journalist that they murdered Emmett Till in part because of his earlier actions toward Carolyn Bryant. Both Roy Bryant, and J.W. Millam are now deceased. So this is on page 1 of the report from the Department of Justice. Now, for the sake of time, I want to focus on page 4. It is, page 4. I'm gonna start there. Section D, Timothy Tyson. Because they talk about in section C, they talk about the 2004 investigation. I'm not focused on the 2004 investigation. I'm talking about the most recent investigation that was opened because of Professor Timothy Tyson's allegations in his book, The Blood of Emmett Till. All right, now, if we look at this section here, this is on page 4. Section D, Timothy Tyson's claim that Carolyn Bryant recanted her testimony. Okay, I had to give you that background information before we get to this. Okay, now this is critical here. Professor Timothy Tyson's claim in his book, The Blood of Emmett Till, that Carolyn Bryant recanted her testimony. All right, no additional investigative steps were taken by the federal or state government in the next decade. Then shortly before the publication of his book, The Blood of Emmett Till, in 2017, Professor Timothy Tyson revealed to several media outlets, pay attention to this, shortly before his book came out in 2017, Professor Timothy Tyson revealed to several media outlets that Carolyn Bryant had, during an interview with him nearly a decade earlier, recanted the account she had provided under oath during a hearing at Roy Bryant's trial. So once again, why'd you wait 9 years to say something about it, Professor Timothy Tyson? You did the interview in 2000, the 2 interviews in 2008. Why'd you wait till 2017, shortly before the publication of his book, The Blood of Emmett Till? Timothy Tyson revealed to several media outlets that Carolyn Bryant had, during the interview with him nearly a decade earlier, recanted the account that she provided under oath. Now, Professor Timothy Tyson's account suggested that Carolyn Bryant lied in court and lied during the FBI's 2004 investigation. Specifically, Professor Timothy Tyson stated that Carolyn Bryant admitted that her representation that Emmett Till had made verbal and physical advances toward her in the store was not true. So now, once again, we covered this story on the African History Network show when it came out, and I read through numerous articles, and it had most of those articles cited the same few passages, the same quotes from Professor Timothy Tyson, things like this. She started spilling the beans before I could start recording and get set up and all this stuff, right? And I'm going through reading numerous articles, and I look at the heading of the article, smoking gun, confession recanted, all this stuff. But then I read the article, and the evidence is not there that correlates with what the title of the article is saying. So this was causing me to have questions back then. You know, we all want evidence to come out. We all want justice for Emmett Till, things like this, right? But when I went through and read this Department of Justice report from when the investigation closed December 6, 2021, okay, I could see why charges weren't brought. There's a lack of evidence admissible in court in 2021. I'm not talking about in 2020. I'm not talking about 1955. Okay, I'm talking about in 2021. There was a lack of evidence admissible in court. Okay, so in the book, which was published the following month, okay, so he starts spilling the beans, so to speak, a month before his book comes out. Just like this says, shortly before publication of his 2017 book, The Blood of Emmett Till, Timothy Tyson revealed to several media outlets that Carolyn Bryant had, during an interview with him nearly a decade earlier, recanted the account that she had provided under oath. Okay. Now, in the book, which was published the following month, Professor Timothy Tyson wrote that Carolyn Bryant said, quote, "I have thought and thought about everything about Emmett Till, the killing and the trial, telling who did what to who. And then murmured," he said, and then she murmured, quote, "They're all dead now anyway," end quote. He wrote that while, quote, "trying hard to distinguish fact from remembrance," end quote, Carolyn Bryant Donham revealed a story different from what he thought he knew about the incident. Specifically, he represented that Carolyn Bryant Donham had handed him a transcript of her sworn testimony, okay, and claimed, quote, "that part's not true." Okay. He then wrote, now what part's not true? Okay. Now, is this the sworn testimony that the jurors didn't hear also? If that part was not true, I asked, Timothy Tyson said, what did happen that evening decades earlier? He said, Carolyn Bryant said, "I want to tell you." But he said, she went on and said, "Honestly, I just don't remember. It was 50 years ago. You tell these stories for so long that they seem true, but that part is not true." What part's not true? She went on to say, quote, "Nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him." Well, we already know that. That's not a breaking news story either. We already know that. So the report goes on to say, in the book, which is The Blood of Emmett Till, this is page 5 of the 16-page report. In the book, Professor Timothy Tyson identified a September 2008 interview with Carolyn Bryant Donham and, quote, accompanying handwritten notes by the author, end quote, as his sources for these and other statements of Carolyn Bryant's included throughout his book. Professor Timothy Tyson also relied upon a draft memoir that Carolyn Bryant had written but had not published. A draft memoir that Carolyn Bryant had written but not published. So it was like a 99-page manuscript. So we found out about this manuscript like in July 2022. Carolyn Bryant wrote, I'm looking at articles I have here printed up dealing with this. Dealing with the memoir. This is an article from Associated Press, and it's 99-page manuscript entitled "I Am More Than a Wolf Whistle." I am more than a wolf whistle. Emmett Till accuser in memoir denies wanting teen killed. This is July 14th, 2022 from the Associated Press. All right, now, current FBI investigation. This is the investigation that closed December 6, 2021. This was the last investigation. It was open largely because of Professor Timothy Tyson's claims in his book, The Blood of Emmett Till. Tyson's claim of Carolyn Bryant's recantation understandably caused outrage in Mississippi and around the country. And it was widely reported by numerous news outlets in both print and television media. Okay. And I read what they had printed in the all those articles. And you remember Clara Peller on the Wendy's commercials from the 1980s, Where's the Beef? That's what I was asking question. I'm like, okay, I see what the title of the article is. And then I go through and read the article, and I'm waiting for the evidence that correlates to smoking gun, confession, recantation, all this stuff. And I'm like, where is it? Where's the beef? So Tyson's claim of Carolyn Bryant's recantation understandably caused outrage in Mississippi and around the country, and it was widely reported by numerous news outlets in both print and television media. Interested parties questioned whether, having recanted her prior statement, Carolyn Bryant could be punished for her previous lies. Interested parties questioned whether, having recanted her prior statement, could she be punished for previous lies. If confirmed, a recantation of Carolyn Bryant Donham's account of what happened inside the store would raise questions about the previous federal and state decisions to decline prosecution. The department's previous conclusion about what role, if any, she had in Emmett Till's abduction and murder, and whether any other person previously identified was complicit in the underlying crimes. And of course, a recantation would directly contradict both her testimony at the state proceedings in 1955. Now, the statute of limitations for perjury are up for the 1955 trial. Statute of limitations per state, and that was a state trial. It's like usually 7 years at the most. It may vary from state to state, but usually like 7 years at the most. And at the state proceedings in 1955 and the statements she provided to the FBI during the previous investigation. Okay. Now the current investigation, which ended December 6, 2021, was designed to identify evidence corroborating Timothy Tyson's claim that Carolyn Bryant Donham recanted her 1955 testimony, and whether there was additional evidence identifying, one, previously unknown information having been complicit in Emmett Till's abduction and murder, of Carolyn Bryant Donham having been complicit in Emmett Till's abduction and murder. Two, any previously unknown living subject, okay, witnesses or people involved in his abduction or what have you, because there were, I've read allegations of some African-American men being involved in his abduction or torture, etc. It's believed that they may have possibly worked for his brother-in-law, Roy Bryant's brother-in-law, something like that. All these people are dead now. Two, any previously unknown living subject. And three, a basis to support any other federal or state charges. A basis to support any other federal or state charges. Now, in addition, in re-examining these issues, the FBI interviewed Carolyn Bryant, Professor Timothy Tyson, and persons close to or associated with them. In addition, the government also re-interviewed this person here, who had to be Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr., who's Emmett Till's cousin and the last living survivor surviving member of the group of young men who accompanied Emmett Till to the grocery and meat market, and who was present when Emmett Till was abducted from his relative's home. Now, the FBI also obtained and reviewed other relevant documents, conducted forensic computer analysis, and consulted with case agents familiar with the earlier investigation. The FBI quickly identified a significant obstacle in its investigation. Professor Timothy Tyson conducted 2 separate interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham and recorded and transcribed both of them. I said, this is what I'm talking about. This deals with lack of evidence. However, the key statements that Carolyn Bryant reportedly made to him, recanting her previous testimony, were neither recorded nor transcribed. This is what I've been saying. His allegations that she recanted testimony, he doesn't have evidence of this. The key statements Carolyn Bryant reportedly made to him, recanting her previous testimony, were neither recorded nor transcribed, because he turned over 2 transcriptions, written transcriptions of the 2 audio recordings. He lost 1 audio recording, but he turned over 2 written transcriptions. Those written transcriptions did not contain a recantation, a testimony. The FBI learned that Professor Timothy Tyson had lost one of the recordings, which I don't understand, because why didn't you back up your recordings with external hard drives? I have 7 external hard drives to back up my research. You're writing a book. You interviewed her for your book. Why didn't you back that thing up? I don't understand it. The one during which the FBI learned that Professor Timothy Tyson had lost one of the recordings, the one during which Carolyn Bryant Donham reportedly recanted her earlier statements and sworn testimony. How convenient. Moreover, Professor Timothy Tyson gave inconsistent explanations of whether there had ever been a recording of the admission, and if not, why no recording had been made. So now we go from smoking gun evidence, recantation in the headlines, to when they actually do the investigation. They open up this investigation largely because of the claims that Professor Timothy Tyson was making. So then when they do the investigation and they question him, so then they're asking him, okay, provide us with the evidence to back up what you wrote in your book. Provide us with the evidence, because so if we're going to prosecute her, we got to go in with evidence. We can't go in with the book. Where's the evidence to back up what you put in the book? Where's the evidence to back up what was being quoted in articles? So when they go try to find the evidence, now it's a problem. Professor Timothy Tyson gave inconsistent explanations of whether there had ever been a recording of the recantation or admission, and if not, if there was no recording, why none had been made? Why no recording of the recantation had been made? Professor Timothy Tyson also gave differing accounts as to when Carolyn Bryant Donham made the recantation. And Tyson told investigators that although Carolyn Bryant Donham, now this right here will get the case dismissed. Her defense attorneys will destroy him on cross-examination. This is page 5 of the Department of Justice report. And Tyson told investigators that although Carolyn Bryant Donham did not specifically identify any part of her testimony as untrue, he understood from the context of their conversation that she was referring to her allegation that Emmett Till had physically accosted her in the store, and that this connection and that this connection was recorded in his written notes. Wait a second. You go from smoking gun recantation evidence, the crime of the century has been solved. You go from that in the headlines to she started spilling the beans before I could start recording, to I lost one of the recordings that contained the recantation, to wait a second, she did not specifically identify any part of her testimony as untrue. I just understood that from the context of what we were talking about in the conversation, that she was referring to the allegation that Emmett Till had physically accosted her in the store, and that this connection is in my written notes, but I have no recording in these two audio recordings that I did in 2008. I have no evidence of this in the audio recordings. Oh, I lost one of the audio recordings. I'm going to start saying something about the audio recording I did in 2008 in 2017. Yeah, go into court with that shit if you want to. Case dismissed. Her defense attorney, she ain't going into court by herself. This ain't people's court. She'll go on with defense attorneys. I could destroy his ass on cross-examination. I just did. I haven't even been to law school. I could destroy him on cross-examination. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. Professor Timothy Tyson's notes, however, do not include such a connection. Uh-oh. This is just page 5 of the report. This is a 16-page report from the Department of Justice. They went through, and so you start putting this stuff in print. Okay, they're gonna come, knock on your door, ask you questions. Okay, so what evidence do you have to substantiate these allegations that you're making in the books? You're doing interviews. Where's your evidence? We're gonna go to court. We need evidence. What did Denzel Washington tell Ethan Hawke in Training Day? It's not what you believe, it's what you can prove. Has anybody ever explained this information to you like this before? Has anybody ever showed you the report from the Department of Justice and walked you through this to explain this to you? This is why we have to deal with facts and evidence and do research and not get all emotional. I know it's an emotional issue. Yes, we want justice for him, but we ain't gonna get justice getting emotional. You got to deal with facts and evidence, especially if you want to go into court. All right, now these facts so Tyson's notes, however, do not include such a connection. These facts would preclude the government from proving beyond a reasonable doubt in court that Carolyn Bryant Donham recanted her previous testimony when speaking with Professor Timothy Tyson, and therefore that she lied to the FBI when she denied having done so. It's not what you believe, is what you can prove. And the burden of proof is on the prosecution. She doesn't have to prove that she didn't lie. The prosecution has to prove that she did. The defense does not have to prove anything. The burden of proof is on the prosecution for a reason. The defense does not, she doesn't have to prove that she didn't lie. The prosecution has to prove that she did based upon evidence. And her daughter-in-law was present for both interviews. Her daughter-in-law said she never recanted her testimony. Oh, now you got a witness. Now you got a witness who was there. Okay, where's your evidence to contradict the witness? Where's your evidence to prove that the witness is lying? Two audio recordings, one was lost. 2 transcriptions of the audio recordings, no recantation. Oh, she didn't specifically recant testimony, but I construed from the context of what we're talking about, that's what she was talking about. Oh, but I don't have any evidence to prove it. Okay. There remains considerable doubt as to the credibility of Carolyn Bryant Donham's original account of what happened inside the store. I agree with that. Particularly her assertion under oath that Emmett Till made lewd comments to her and physically accosted her, as her testimony is undercut by assertions made by I'm not sure who this is. This may have been Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr., who was one of Emmett Till's cousins, who was outside of the grocery store, and other black youths who were with Emmett Till at the store on the day of the incident. However, blank is the only one of these witnesses who is still alive. So that'll be Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr. is the only one of these witnesses who is still alive, and he was not inside the store at the time. This is what I said. He was not inside the store at the time. He was outside the store. Okay. Thus, there is no witness the government could now call to disprove her account. Where's your evidence? She don't have to prove that she didn't recant testimony. She does not have to prove that she didn't lie. The prosecution has to prove that she did lie. This is why we need to understand law. Moreover, so there is no witness the government could now call to disprove her account of what even happened inside the store. Because it was just 2 people inside the store and one is dead. Now she's dead, but they ain't had security cameras then, which they did. Moreover, as explained more fully below, the statute of limitations has expired on any charges that could be brought relating to her original account of the events in the story. This was said, the statute of limitations is like between 5 and 7 years for perjury in a trial. That's gone. Trial was in 1955. All right, so read the so that is page 5. If we have it. He explained. Oh, right here, page 6. Yeah, this is good right here. This is good. Let's go down to this. The FBI, together with the Mississippi District Attorney's Office, 4th District, re-interviewed. Who is this? Re-interviewed in the summer of 2018. Blank declined to participate in the subsequent interview. Blank, who had been present during Tyson's interviews with, that would have to be the daughter-in-law. The daughter-in-law, who had been present during Tyson's interviews with Carolyn Bryant, denied that Carolyn Bryant had ever recanted her earlier accounts of what happened in the store. Okay, now let's go down. I want to go down to this right here. This is middle of page 6. The FBI, together with the Mississippi Attorney's Office, 4th District, interviewed, I think this would be Carolyn Bryant in the summer 2018. Blank relayed his account of Blank relayed his account of what happened before and after Emmett Till entered the grocery and meat market in August 1955, which contradicted Carolyn Bryant's long-held account of those events. He also so that had to be 2018. That 2018. I think that was Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr. Because let me see, Simeon Wright died. Let's see, when did Simeon Wright die? Simeon Wright died in 2017. Simeon Wright, another cousin of Emmett Till, died in September 2017. So if this was 2018, this interview took place, there had to be Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr., who's another cousin of Emmett Till. This one right here, Washington Post. Simeon Wright, witness to the abduction of his cousin Emmett Till, dies at 74. Okay, September 5th, 2017, Washington Post. This is Moses Wright, which was Emmett Till's uncle. Okay, so read this article here. Simeon Wright. So the Simeon Wright died September of 2017. All right, now I'm going to go back to the Department of Justice report. This is page 6. Okay, so this would have been Wheeler Parker, another cousin of Emmett Till. Okay, so he also relayed his account of what happened the night Emmett Till was abducted from his relative's home. Blank account was consistent with the account he provided federal investigators in 2004. So they're going to go back. So in this investigation that ended in 2021, they're going to go back and look at what was said in the 2004 investigation and compare the two interviews, compare the two explanations, things of this nature. Okay, the FBI, together with the Mississippi District Attorney's Office, 4th District, interviewed Professor Timothy Tyson in the fall of 2019. Okay, now this is critical right here. According to Professor Timothy Tyson, Carolyn Bryant Donham made the controversial statements at the very beginning of his first interview with her. Okay, he said she made the controversial statements at the beginning of the first interview he did with her. He explained that he had not yet begun recording their conversation when she made these comments, so he took notes of their conversation instead. Oh, she started. This is what he meant. I walked in, she started spilling the beans. This is what he said. So she started talking before he started recording. Now, Tyson told investigators he never thought to report Carolyn Bryant Donham's confessional quotes to law enforcement at the time because he believed the investigation was closed. This don't make sense either. Okay? He said in 2008, when Carolyn Bryant Donham started spilling the beans, he didn't go to the authorities because he thought the investigation was closed. New evidence would cause a reopening of the investigation. The FBI also reviewed numerous documents, audio records, and electronic media, some of which was obtained through blank and some through witness cooperation, including a single photocopied page of Timothy Tyson's handwritten notes, 1 audio recording of an interview with Carolyn Bryant Donham, transcripts of 2 audio recordings of interviews with Carolyn Bryant made by Timothy Tyson's blank. I don't know what that is. A copy of Carolyn Bryant's 99-page unpublished memoir, and an image of the hard drive from Timothy Tyson's laptop. Okay, from Tyson's blank laptop. I don't know what it is, but this is the type of research. Okay, so you make this when they do an investigation. This is the type of research they do. They go deep down to find the evidence. A copy of Carolyn Bryant's 109-page unpublished memoir that contained Timothy Tyson's editorial comments and suggestions, the contents of a 2014 unpublished paper that Tyson wrote referencing his interviews with Carolyn Bryant that Tyson's graduate student posted online, email conversations between Professor Timothy Tyson and another author about the content of the 2014 online paper, email conversations between Tyson and blank, I don't know who this is, email conversations between Tyson and somebody else. One of them may be, I don't know, Carolyn Bryant used email, I don't know. Comments Tyson made publicly to various reporters about his interviews with Carolyn Bryant. So all that stuff that you say in the media, they're going to go review all that, trying to find evidence. Okay. All right. Now, Donham's, okay. In 2017, FBI has met with Carolyn Bryant and her daughter-in-law, who had been present. Her daughter-in-law had been present for Tyson's interviews of Carolyn Bryant. The purpose of the interview was to consider whether Carolyn Bryant or anyone else participated or played a more significant role in Emmett Till's abduction and murder than previously found, and to determine whether Carolyn Bryant would admit to federal authorities that she had reportedly admitted during her interview with Tyson. Okay, authorities what she had reportedly admitted during her interview with Timothy Tyson. Far from corroborating Tyson's account, however, Carolyn Bryant adamantly denied having made the admission that Professor Timothy Tyson attributed to her in his book. So she was saying, I didn't recant any testimony. Moreover, she and her daughter-in-law together provided a very different account of their interactions with Professor Timothy Tyson than those portrayed in his book and those Tyson later shared with federal investigators. In fact, their accounts differ dramatically from Professor Timothy Tyson's, not just on what was said during the interviews, but on the nature of their relationship. This is page 6. Their understanding of what Professor Timothy Tyson could do with a draft memoir they were working on, and their knowledge of Tyson's intention to write a book about Emmett Till. Page 7. According to, I guess this is Carolyn Bryant, nearly 10 years earlier, she and her daughter-in-law began writing a memoir of her life. Realizing the task of doing so was too overwhelming for the two of them, they reached out to Professor Timothy Tyson for help with writing, editing, and publishing the book. He's supposed to help her write her memoir. When Professor Timothy Tyson agreed, Blank traveled to North Carolina, where Blank lived, to meet with Timothy Tyson for help with the memoir. According to blank, she met with Tyson on 2 occasions for a few hours. According to Carolyn Bryant Donham, I guess it is. She met with Tyson on 2 occasions for a few hours, and Tyson recorded their sessions. Blank indicated that Tyson, quote, recorded everything from the moment he walked in the door, end quote. Blank explained that shortly after the interviews, Tyson provided her with copies of the interview. I guess it's Carolyn Bryant Donham. Explained that shortly after the interviews, Tyson provided her with copies of the interview transcripts to assist her in writing her memoir. Blank, however, eventually decided against publishing the memoir. But let's back up for a second. Blank indicated that Professor Timothy Tyson recorded everything from the moment he walked in the door. But I thought Timothy Tyson said she started spilling the beans before he could start recording. I thought he said she started spilling the beans before he could start recording. At the beginning of the first interview, that's what he said. Okay, page 6. This is why you got to read this stuff. This is what I'm saying. All this BS floating around. Who has gone through this report and broke this down to you? Who? Name them. Where are they? Show me the evidence. This is the third time I've done this on this show. I did it when they closed I did it when they closed the investigation in December 2021. I did it when they found the arrest warrant that was never served. I said, there's a lack of evidence here. This is the third time we've gone, at least. This is the third time we've gone through this here. Okay, so, all right, now, it was page 5. Lost one. Tyson knows how to do not. Yep, did not have. It was, I think it was page 5 when he said he came through and the facts, and she started. She started talking before he could start recording. Okay, that's what he said. All right, I think that's page 5, somewhere on page 5. Okay, let's continue. All right, now. Blank explained that shortly after the interviews, Tyson provided her with copies of the interviews. That'd be Carolyn Bryant Donham. Okay. Provided her a copy. Explained that shortly after the interviews, Tyson provided her with copies of the interview transcripts to assist her in writing. I think he gave that to the daughter-in-law to assist her in writing Carolyn Bryant Donham's memoir. Okay. Blank, however, Carolyn Bryant Donham eventually decided against publishing her memoir. Although she did not repeat to federal investigators her account of what happened inside the store in 1955, Carolyn Bryant Donham denied to investigators that she ever told Timothy Tyson in either of their interviews. Okay, denied that she ever told Timothy Tyson in either of their interviews that she had lied during her testimony. Carolyn Bryant also denied to investigators that that'd be her daughter-in-law. Her daughter-in-law also denied to investigators that Carolyn Bryant had recanted her testimony during her conversations with Timothy Tyson and explained to investigators that Carolyn Bryant had consistently maintained for over 40 years that Emmett Till had physically grabbed her in the store. Now, there's only 2 people in the store. I'm not saying she's I'm not saying Carolyn Bryant is telling the truth, but this is what she said consistently for 40 years. Okay. Blank confirmed that to his knowledge, Blank's story had never changed. Okay, now this is this is page 7. Because not only failed to repeat the because Blank not only failed to repeat the inculpatory admission when talking, because Carolyn Bryant Donham not only failed to repeat the inculpatory admission when talking to federal authorities, but also denied ever having made such an admission to Professor Timothy Tyson, authorities attempted to find other evidence. Authorities attempted to find other evidence that Carolyn Bryant Donham had in fact confessed to Timothy Tyson that previous accounts of the incident were false. Okay. So then they go through. This is an extensive report. This is 16 pages. Okay. I'm on page 7. We ain't gonna go through all 16, but I'm just the salient points. Okay. Section C, page 7, Timothy Tyson. Federal authorities contacted Tyson and asked him if he would provide government officials with any information he had from his meetings with Carolyn Bryant Donham, such as notes, recordings, or any other information upon which he based his claim. What are you basing your claim on, sir? You're doing media interviews. You wrote this book, sir. What are you basing your claim on? Okay, we're trying to find evidence to bring charges. So where's your evidence? Such as notes, recordings, or any other information upon which he based his claim that Carolyn Bryant Donham had recanted her testimony. Professor Timothy Tyson informed authorities that material from his interviews of Carolyn Bryant Donham belonged to the University of North Carolina's Southern Historical Collections. University of North Carolina's Southern Historical Collections. Federal investigators confirmed that the library archives received from Professor Timothy Tyson 2 transcribed interviews, a copy of Carolyn Bryant's draft memoir, and a photograph of a legal notepad. In September, so they got 2 transcripts of the audio recordings. Tyson lost one of the audio recordings, but they have the 2 transcripts of the 2 audio recordings. In September 2017, the FBI obtained from the library archives and other sources 1 audio recording, okay, transcripts of 2 audio recordings, a single photograph, a single photocopy page of handwritten notes, a copy of Carolyn Bryant's memoir, and an edited copy of her memoir, an image of the hard drive from Professor Timothy Tyson's laptop, and various email correspondence. Okay, now section 1, C1, section C, number 1, audio recordings and transcriptions. Very, very important, because when you say smoking gun evidence, all this stuff, so now you're looking for the evidence. Okay, so let's look for the evidence. The FBI obtained an audio recording of one of Timothy Tyson's interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham and transcriptions of both interviews. Okay. Tyson informed the FBI in an email that he could not locate the recording of his first interview with Carolyn Bryant Donham, and that his then, I don't know what this is, blank, lost it somehow. Okay. You say his assistant or something like that, lost it somehow. The first interview where she started spilling the beans before you could start recording. But she said He started recording as soon as he came in the door. Tyson indicated, however, that he thought they quote unquote found it, and he would continue to search for it and update the FBI with the results of his search. He has never provided the FBI with a second recording. He has, oh, I thought they found it. I'll update you on it. I think they found it. Oh, no, they didn't find it. We'll keep looking. He has never provided the FBI with a second recording. Professor Timothy Tyson did not mention or suggest in his email to the FBI that the recordings, whether available or not, were incomplete, or that they did not cover the entirety of his interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham. Neither the available recording, this is an important point right here, because when you make this claim, you need to have evidence. Now, when you don't have evidence, now there's a problem. Neither the available recording, the one recording, nor the transcripts include the controversial statements that Professor Timothy Tyson attributed to Carolyn Bryant Donham. Moreover, case agents who participated in previous interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham scrupulously reviewed the transcripts to determine whether she made admissions inconsistent with her prior statements to federal authorities. Agents determined that while she provided some additional details of events surrounding Emmett Till's abduction and murder that were previously unknown to federal investigators, none of Carolyn Bryant Donham's recorded or transcribed statements was materially different from statements she made during interviews with the FBI during the earlier investigation. And none, N-O-N-E, none suggests that she altered or recanted her previous testimony. Where's your evidence? And none of these new details led to the identification of a new living participant in Emmett Till's abduction and murder who could be prosecuted because they all died. So then they talk about Timothy Tyson's handwritten notes. Page 8. The undated handwritten notes Timothy Tyson provided to the FBI do not include a full quotation of the alleged recantation that Tyson described in his book. So you wrote it. Where did you get this stuff from? Your notes don't even have a full quotation of the alleged recantation that you wrote in your book. The notes include only 4 statements without context as to what subject had been under discussion when the statements were made or what questions had led to the statement. The notes state in full as follows. Okay, blank, and then that point wasn't true. 50 years ago, I just don't remember. Nothing that boy ever did could justify what happened to him. Professor Timothy Tyson did not provide any accompanying information to identify the context in which Carolyn Bryant Donham allegedly made these statements. Nor did he provide any additional notes of his interviews with Donham. Rather, he represented that he did not believe he took any additional notes of their conversations. There is also nothing in the recording or the transcripts that obviously correlates to these statements to provide any additional context. So they're saying these statements here, these 4 statements, that point wasn't true 50 years ago. I just don't remember all that stuff that he said. They're saying there's nothing in the recording that he gave them or in the two written transcripts of the 2 audio recordings that even correlates to these notes. And he wrote this in his book. There's also nothing, nothing, nothing in the recording / transcripts that obviously correlates to these statements to provide any additional context. And instead, the recording transcripts raise additional questions about what Carolyn Bryant Donham said and when she said it. Interview of Timothy Tyson and review of additional information. The recording transcripts of Tyson's interviews with Donham do not include a recantation or provide context to Tyson's sparse handwritten notes, and the notes themselves do not corroborate Tyson's assertion that Carolyn Bryant Donham recanted testimony. For that reason, the FBI and the Mississippi District Attorney's Office, 4th District, reviewed additional information uncovered during the investigation and interviewed Tyson to ask him directly about the nature and content of the statements he attributed to Carolyn Bryant Donham. I said, look here, man, come here. Okay, look here. You got this book out here. You're doing interviews, speeches, all this stuff. Have a seat. We got some questions for you. Okay. Where's your evidence to back up this stuff that you wrote in this book that you're selling for? I don't know how much the book costs. Where's your evidence to back up this stuff that you wrote in this book? But rather than obtaining other corroborating evidence to support Tyson's claim that Carolyn Bryant Donham offered a recantation, because they're going to see him. They say, knock, knock. Hey, page 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 80. Where'd you get this information from that's in this book? But rather than obtaining other corroborating evidence to support Tyson's claim that Carolyn Bryant Donham offered a recantation, investigators instead identified numerous inconsistencies in Timothy Tyson's account that raised questions about the credibility of his account of the interviews. Put his ass on the witness stand and see what happens. I could tell him, I would destroy him on cross-examination. Are you serious? This is what happens when you don't read. I've read this 3 times. This is at least the 3rd time we've dealt with this on this show. Yeah, and I said before, yes, I want her prosecuted, all this stuff. It ain't gonna be based upon this. Now with his ass, oh hell no. He'll get the case dismissed. Inconsistent. Okay, so let me back. But rather than obtaining other corroborating evidence to support Tyson's claim that Carolyn Bryant Donham offered a recantation, investigators instead identified numerous inconsistencies in Tyson's account that raised questions about the credibility of his account of the interviews. For example, it is undisputed that Tyson interviewed Carolyn Bryant Donham twice, but there is confusion about the purpose of the interviews and when they occurred, when the key statements were made and in what context they were made, and why those key statements were not memorialized. Moreover, inconsistencies between Tyson's account and documentary evidence would prevent the department of justice from relying upon Tyson's uncorroborated account. What they're saying is he's a terrible witness and he keeps changing his goddamn story, and we can't put this fool on the witness stand because the case is going to get dismissed. He'll lose the case. They won't even, if they take that before a grand jury, the grand jury is going to come back with a no bill. They're going to say it's not enough evidence to proceed with a case because he keeps changing the story. He doesn't have evidence to back up the story he keeps changing. Confusion over the purpose of the interviews and when and in what context made the alleged recantation. Read the rest of this. This is just page 8. I got like 8 more pages to go. So this is at justice.gov, Department of Justice website. This is why we have to do more research. That's why I can't broadcast as much as I want to, because I'm busy doing research. So when I do broadcast, I know what the hell I'm talking about. And I can back that thing up. Proper documentation ends all conversation. So now if somebody said, oh, I don't like this information, blah, 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 blah. If you got some evidence, please contact the Department of Justice. You know, so if there are other witnesses out there, somebody we don't know about, if you have evidence, contact the Department of Justice. They'll open up the case again. She's dead. You know, I think she was in hospice. She had cancer. She was probably in excruciating pain, things like that. I think all that's karma coming back on her. I think that's all karma coming back on her. If you have some evidence, go to justice.gov, Department of Justice. Please contact the Department of Justice with the evidence. All right. So what's important for us to understand is that we have to understand law. And even though a lot of these issues are emotional, we have to put emotions aside and deal with facts and evidence, understand strategy, deal with things methodically, and understand how to build a case, how to build a legal argument. Okay. So originally, when I enrolled in Wayne State University in the fall of 1989, I enrolled as a pre-law major because I wanted to be an attorney. Ended up graduating with a degree in business administration. But I took a law class in high school, and then in business school, we had to take business law to be able to graduate from business school. You have to take business law. And then I also ended up working for an attorney as well. So if you hang around attorneys, if you ever work for an attorney, you know they are very methodical, because when you study law, you're taught how to build a case step by step by step, and you build a case based upon the evidence. This is what we need to learn how to do. And the same thing goes along with reparations. And learning how to make legal arguments for reparations, all this stuff. There's a whole nother conversation. You watch some of my videos, I deal with that also. Okay. So hopefully you learned a lot today. Go read this. Don't take my word for this. Proper documentation ends all conversation. Read the entire 16-page report. Okay. This is what we have to engage in. We have to learn how to do this. We need to do less talking and more research. I teach online history classes Saturday. Okay. They say Rainy J said, so glad I didn't buy his book. So he basically is speaking for her. I don't even think he's speaking for her. There's no evidence to back up his claims. There's no evidence to back up his claims. Okay. And then you lost the recording. Like, I have 7 external hard drives. You don't have external hard drives to back up your audio recordings, and you're writing a book? That doesn't even make sense. Okay, maybe you had the recording and you were mugged on the way home and they stole your voice recorder that you recorded it with or something like that. Okay. It was 2008, so you couldn't upload it to the cloud. You didn't have your laptop with you. You got robbed on a subway on the way home or something like that. You know, you got jumped by a gang of midgets or something. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. All right. But look, you hear me talk about, if you watch the African History Network show, you hear me talk about my online classes. You see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You see me on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture. That same level of research and things like that, I bring to my classes as well. Okay. So Saturdays, 12 noon to, Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I teach ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt, ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, this is a 12-week online course. This time around, we're going to do 13 weeks. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. A year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. You have full access. Okay. So you can join us in class, our next class on Saturday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Click right here for the full course. As soon as you register, there's bonus content you can start watching. You can watch previous classes, and there'll be 5 of my lectures. We'll upload those this weekend to the video library. So you get 5 of my lectures free as well. Okay. And then on Sundays, I teach Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement. Okay. 1800 to 1968. So we go through and deal with all this history. We deal with the history chronologically. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. So in the first class is about like 80 to 100 articles. We reference 7 books. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class. And then in the second class is something that's probably close to 80 articles, something like that we reference as well, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended, what leads up to the Civil War taking place, what were the laws and policies put in place after slavery ended to put us in the predicament we're in today, to understand where we need to go from here. Okay. So, and your understanding of history is directly related to your understanding of politics. Your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. So this is Black resistance movements, Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement. We have a bundle pack. You can get both classes for only $100. That is a $300 value. All right. And this information is PG-13, so you can use it with your children as well. Check out the interview I did with Tony Browder dealing with why Nile Valley Civilization History Matters. He's the author of Nile Valley Civilization, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, as well as Egypt on the Potomac. He's been to Egypt, I think, about 54 times. He's an archaeologist and historian and a friend of mine. He's just interviewed him. We did this Sunday, April 23rd, the interview. And Saturday, April 29th, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to interview Dr. Charles Finch. And we're going to discuss, because he just texted me the topic, we're going to discuss Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, Queen Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh. And we'll talk about his new book that's coming out very soon, that deals with 10,000 years of Nile Valley civilization. Okay. If you want to support the African History Network, we definitely need your support. It takes a lot to run it, a lot to do the research, a lot of resources, pay for these various services that I use. $, the Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App. Then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, buy the books, pay for the ink, the paper, all this stuff that we use. Finance the radio show, help us keep doing the radio show. We're celebrating 13 years of me broadcasting the African History Network show. And I first started broadcasting March 10th, 2010. And we're celebrating is 7 years on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. I started on 9:10 a.m. It was April of 2016. April of 2016. All right, look, we have to get out of here because I have to teach classes this weekend, and I have to do an interview with Dr. Charles Finch. Hopefully, you learned a lot today. Hopefully, for a lot of these other people, you know, they will be brought to justice as well in these other crimes, these other cold cases. Okay. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.